Well, welcome to the next episode of the Christ-Centered Cosmic Civilization, and we are in our Narnia series celebrating the 75th anniversary of Narnia. And in our opening episode, we thought about the issues in general around Narnia and the power of myth to deliver us from the confines of a superficial view of reality, being stuck on what is almost an island, a confined prison island, and then realizing, no, there is an isthmus, a strip of land that we can cross and get onto the great continent of reality, a fully deep and rich and high and broad reality were filled with the three heavens and angels and archangels and all the company of heaven, together with the fey creatures and all the mystery and magic and wonder that is Christ's cosmic empire. So all of that C.S. Lewis helps us with, and now we're going to try and go through the different books in the 7-stage journey. And although, in a way, The Magician's Nephew, it kind of would come first chronologically because it deals with the creation of Narnia. It actually was written later on, and the first book that was published in Narnia is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And the title is powerful in itself. And in a way, it's the one that people often think of as the most obvious in its Christian symbolism. I'm not sure that's true. I think The Magician's Nephew and The Last Battle are extremely transparent in that sense. But nevertheless, it's the one that it's the starting point for most people, and it's the one that there've been certain different film versions of it, and it's the one that, in a way, everyone, if you ask them if they know about Narnia, they tend to refer to this one. Now, there's many things we want to explore about Narnia as we go on. We're going to look at how the 7 books relate to the 7 planets. We're going to look at a variety of things. But in this, let's get straight into this one with the story of it, really. And it's snow, winter. So it's a northern hemisphere tale of Christmas being at winter, and that's quite an important sub-idea. But the idea of this snow crunching underfoot, the lamppost glowing in the twilight, and that lamppost has a big backstory that we only really discover much later in the series. And there's a little girl, Lucy Pevensey, and she has stumbled through a wardrobe into a world where it's always winter but never Christmas. And that's that. Oh, what a fantastic phrase that is, because the idea of winter is the season, all the seasons, the 4 seasons, take us on a gospel cycle. And Easter comes at the beginning of the seasonal proclamation of the gospel, where spring is the time of new life rising from the dead, and that's the time, of course, of Easter. That's the time of New Year in the Bible. So you start a new year, and with that is new life springing up, and summer is when that new life is at its height. And this is why the gospel and seasonal imagery is in the Bible, because the Bible, the world of the Bible, is set in the northern hemisphere. It kind of it expects us to be viewing things from that, and you would have to readjust that imagery if you live in the southern hemisphere. But the Bible world is set in the northern hemisphere, as is the world of Narnia. So there it is. It's winter, death, cold, lifeless, and there are no leaves, no flowers, and there's this kind of sense in which it's hard to get food, and all of it is like a fallen world. But never Christmas. The phrase of winter but never Christmas. So Christmas is this wonderful experience of hope, redemption, renewal, rescue, the possibility of coming resurrection and everything that bursts in this light and life and warmth at the center of winter and all that. And it's as if, imagine if there's only winter. And of course, for C.S. Lewis, he loved his Norse mythology. And in Norse mythology, hell is a cold place. In the medieval Christian world, which is drawn directly from the Bible, that hell has a lot to do with heat, the heat of shame and regret, the burning of shame, and so heat and fire and so on. But in Norse mythology, they have hell, the realm of hell, as totally cold, because that's the threat to life, is the cold, the lifelessness, the lack of food, the lack of shelter, all of that. That winter is the great enemy in Norse mythology, and so C.S. Lewis draws on that, and it's so that image of the winter with no Christmas, and Lucy goes across the isthmus in a way, and in this sense, that's not the imagery here. It's a wardrobe. The idea then that there's a door that's part of ordinary life, something that's part of ordinary life, and yet it becomes something that transports through to this other world. And it's quite important that it's a wardrobe. Now, later, there's a backstory to that wardrobe. And the wood from the wardrobe, it's got a whole backstory. And again, that comes up later in the series, and it's one of my favourite things. What is this wardrobe? How is it able to have such power? But it's the idea, it's just a wardrobe, a door, an ordinary door into a container in ordinary life, and yet it becomes this vehicle of journeying into another world. All of this has depth to it that for C.S. Lewis, the real world, the cosmic civilization of the divine emperor of Jesus, is not something that belongs to a kind of universe far, far away, long, long ago. It's rather a reality that is with us, easily accessible in a way, and often accessible through the ordinary things of life. And, of course, with C.S. Lewis, there's that sacramental dimension where it is the simple physical things that convey to us divine reality. There's more that we can explore there. But we're into it. Narnia, it's winter, and that's how a lot of people remember it. But it's not just the story, is it? For C.S. Lewis, he's trying to tell us the story. And for people, for lots and lots of people, this is how they began to experience this baptized imagination, their first glimpse of the gospel in this fairy tale form. For a lot of people I've spoken to over the years, this was how they began. This is when they experienced the gospel, even before they'd heard it in another form. And sometimes when they've come to church and heard the story of Jesus as it really was, there's a kind of shock as they realize they've already experienced something of the gospel through Narnia. Well, in this episode, we want to explore kind of three themes from this Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Substitutionary atonement, resurrection, and new creation. And this, and why, how this, well, let's get straight into it. Section 1, this, well, let's set the stage, first of all. The story begins in wartime England. There's the four children, Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy, and they are evacuated to the countryside. And then there's a professor's house, and this professor is interesting, and of course there's a backstory to him. And in his house, Lucy discovers a wardrobe that leads into Narnia. Narnia's under the curse of the White Witch. Her reign has made it always winter, never Christmas, into this frozen world. There's Aslan in that frozen world. Now, the drama of the story centres on Edmund. He betrays his siblings because he's lured by the witch's promises. And there's this kind of enchanted Turkish delight. Turkish delight is a confection, a very sweet, rose-flavoured confection. And you can imagine with C.S. Lewis, he would I remember when I was little, that actually, Turkish delight, was the thing that to me was the most delicious possible sweet that you could ever eat. And I guess C.S. Lewis had a similar experience. Or a vision of it. It has been argued by some that he has the temptation focused in Turkish delight because C.S. Lewis is wanting to make a subtle rejection of Islam and the Ottoman Empire and in Turkey and so on. It's possible, but I'm not sure. He does engage with the issue of Islam in various ways in the Narnia series. Whether that's going on here, I'm not sure. But Edmund does become bewitched because his desire for pleasure, something that is pleasing to eat. And of course, the echoes in Genesis with Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve eating something that is that has this corrupting effect upon them. And Edmund becomes a traitor. He sells out for food. And again, the story of Esau in the Bible, who sells his birthright, a gospel inheritance, for stew, in his case, lentil stew, not even Turkish delight. But in Narnia, this treachery, to betray, to commit treason, carries death sentence. And so that takes us into this theme, first big theme, of where Aslan gives his own life as a substitute for Edmund. Now, Edmund, he's human. And there is this awareness in Narnia that the humans are the key to all reality. So to take a human life, to possess, the witch knows that to control a human and to kill a human is a very big deal, So to outweigh that is difficult. Edmund is guilty. He has committed treason. He has betrayed his family. He sided with the witch. And according to what is called the deep magic of Narnia, every traitor belongs to her. And his life is forfeit. He must die. The idea in the Bible is that if you commit wrong, the Bible talks about the sins being visited back upon the person. It's in the modern world, we struggle with this. We don't really understand sin and crime and justice and these things. It's become, we're very alienated from something. But in the Bible, the idea is if you've caused harm, and harm either to individual people or to institutions or to cosmic reality, you've damaged this. The idea is that harm and pain and suffering that you've caused and it is currently on other people, the idea is that the Lord God will gather that up and bring it back and dump it upon you. You've brought that suffering and damage. And so rather, it's unfair for that to be sat upon other people or to be left on society or even on the cosmos or the land or so on. And the idea is the harm and damage that has been done should be gathered and sent and returned to sender, returned to the one who brought it, and then it's visited back upon that person. So here the concept is that the deep magic of Narnia says, well, treason causes such damage, such harm to individuals and the kingdom and, the nature of things. When this is gathered up and returned to sender, to the traitor, it kills them. It requires their very life, that when it is visited upon them. So his life is forfeit. But Aslan steps forward and offers himself as a substitute for Edmund. Instead of Edmund dying, it's as if Aslan will say, may this, the treachery and all the harm that is caused, may it be visited upon me instead of on Edmund. I will substitute myself in place of him. And so Aslan is bound and mocked and shaved and killed upon the stone table. And that is, again, this kind of, again, I love these ways that there are things that have a very deep back history to them, but it isn't given. It isn't fully explained. What is this table of sacrifice? But the point is clear, isn't it? Lewis is not really subtle here. This is the cross of the Lord Jesus in fairy tale mythological form. The innocent dies for the guilty. The king, and not just any king, it's the cosmic king, the divine king, the king who has infinite power in himself and yet lays down his life for the traitor, because the offence of Edmund, if he has harmed reality, if he's harmed the kingdom of the king, it's against Aslan that in a way that this is committed in an ultimate sense, and yet the king says, no, I will take his place and I will die instead of him. It's an incredible thing, because children reading this story, this doctrine of how atonement the word atonement really just means how is sin and evil to be dealt with in such a way that it's done away with. How is it answered? And in the Bible, we get into deep things where it must be confronted and condemned and confessed, and the all the pain and suffering that it's caused must be visited, returned, and dealt with and absorbed, and there must be outrage, and there must be restitution, and there's all these things in the Bible. Not all of that is explored here, because as well as an idea about Jesus came in the Bible to defeat or destroy the works of the devil, and that element of the story comes out because the wicked witch is symbolic of the devil. And so there's this idea that what is going on in the death of Jesus is something to do with breaking the devil's grip or possession of humanity. The devil is described as the god of this world in the Bible. And so this wicked witch, who has this great authority over the winter world of Narnia, he breaks that by his death. And so children reading this experience the substitutionary death of Jesus on the cross, and a lot of the big consequences of it. It is felt, they feel it. They see Edmund's shame, they see Aslan's sacrifice, and even a child or a pagan person, adult, whatever, can understand at a deep level what it means for somebody to die instead of you, as a substitute for you. And it's not just anybody, that for such a great person who has no need to die, that they, of all people, die as a substitute. A child feels it in the story. And C.S. Lewis does the story that way, as we've thought, because he once said he wanted to, what was the phrase? It's something like sneak past those watchful dragons. And what are the watchful dragons? They are the defences that people put up against religious language. And he wants people to engage with the reality of the cross of Jesus, the wonder of it, that this mighty, immortal king finds a way to die instead of us, so that we don't need to face this kind of deep, cosmic, eternal death that we're faced with because of sin and evil and the power of the devil and all of that. And he conveys all of that without using any religious language. Someone's put it like this: the atonement is not argued, it is imagined. And imagination often reaches deeper than argument. Well, there it is. That's this big theme then. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The lion, the kingly, divine lion, really dies for the condemned, hopeless, enslaved, captured traitor. That's the gospel. But then there's resurrection, and this is our second theme, resurrection and triumph over death. Because the story doesn't end with Aslan's death. At dawn, the stone table cracks, the witch's power is broken, and Aslan rises alive again. That stone table is seems to symbolize the stone tablets of the law. And when that is broken, so it's to do with this covenant, a kind of ancient covenant being overcome or something. But Lewis explains this, that yes, the deep magic requires the death of the traitor, but that there is a, quote, deeper magic from before the dawn of time. There it is, so, and in according to the deeper magic, so there's deep magic that has this idea that the sins must be visited upon the sinner, because it isn't fair if the sins are left upon the victims. They must be visited back upon the sinner. Yeah, that's deep magic, all of that. But there's a deeper magic. And there's a deeper magic that can be, that visiting of the sins back can be answered in a different way. And this is one of the best things of C.S. Lewis, because in a lot of theology, it's as if the deepest magic is the law, is sin. There has to be perfect obedience. Otherwise there is condemnation and death and hell and so on. That is the base thing. That's the deepest magic. And then the gospel is introduced as a kind of afterthought or a plan B. But of course, C.S. Lewis is saying, no. The deepest magic from before the dawn of time, before the foundation of the world, is this gospel, is redemption, is this grace that before the universe ever began, was even before it was even conceived, really, there is within the living God redemption. And this idea that the lamb must be slain, that's the deepest level of reality. So that the number one thing, the basic relationship between God and humanity is not law demanding perfect obedience. The deepest is love, grace, forgiveness, generosity, all of that, something deeper. So in the story, there's the deeper magic says that if a willing victim who has committed no treachery is killed in a traitor's stead, then death itself begins to work backwards. So it's the idea that death can be killed by such a death. The death of death in the death of Christ. That's what's going on here. It's resurrection. It's Easter morning in fairy tale form. And in the story, C.S. Lewis captures the joy of that. There's this wonderful time where the freshly resurrected Aslan has a kind of playful time with Susan and Lucy, and there's laughter and exuberance of life breaking through death. And that is so important to the gospel. It's not just that sins are forgiven in a legally abstract way. Those sins are forgiven. And it's not just that there's like a righteous credit made in a legal spreadsheet, though of course, there's a sense in which that is a helpful metaphor. But more importantly, that it's a reality of joy. And the Bible, even in the depths of suffering and trial and temptation, the Bible just keeps commanding joy, not because it's like put a fixed grin on your face and pretend to be happy, but because there really is joy, a resurrection joy that comes because death, the final enemy, has been defeated, and we can already experience new birth and resurrection and the joy. So again, sometimes I've known people who've experienced that kind of the joy of Aslan's resurrection, and they're in a way experiencing what it is like to know the risen Jesus even before they have met the risen Jesus. For some children, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe is their first Easter story. For adults, it might be a reminder of resurrection, that it's not just doctrine, it's joy, it's laughter, it's this death of death and all the rest of it. Well, let's just pull it together about, there's another theme that I want us to just think about, and it's the new creation. Because with Aslan's return, when he is resurrected from death, it's not as if that just sorts out Edmund's problem of being a traitor. And Edmund is individually set free from the power of the wicked witch and so on. But everything just goes on as it did before. No. The death and resurrection of Aslan changes everything, not just for Edmund, but for everybody and everything. The winter begins to melt, the snow thaws, the flowers bloom, the rivers run again. And it's not just a change of weather, it's a new creation. It's like the whole world is renewed. The curse, there's been a curse imposed, and that is lifted. The land itself is healed and rejoices. And all of that you will recognize if you know your Bible. It's in Isaiah 24, 25, even in Isaiah 11. It's particularly, people may think of it in terms of Romans 8, where the whole creation is longing for redemption because of this spirit of resurrection that flows out from the resurrection, the death and resurrection of Jesus. Creation groaning under bondage, waiting for liberation. And when the King comes, the whole creation is renewed. And already we get a taste of that new creation future. And so it's important that it's not just the children who are free, the whole land, the animals, the trees, the rivers. Salvation, redemption, resurrection is cosmic. And again, in this podcast, the Christ-centered cosmic civilization, we're always wanting to note how humanity, in the image of God and participants in the divine nature, we are at the center of reality, but it is the whole of the three heavens that are caught up into this gospel reality of church life and the life and work of Jesus. And that's why Narnia feels so big in a way, such a heart-expanding, mind-expanding world to explore and enjoy. Because it's not just about individual redemption, it's about the renewal of all things. And that's why The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe as a story endures. It is the gospel in miniature, and it's got so much to it. It's not, sometimes when a person explains the gospel and uses a illustration or an analogy, I feel, and maybe this is just me, but sometimes I feel a little bit frustrated or disappointed because they've captured only one aspect of the cross of Jesus, only one bit of it. And they maybe, for example, explore only substitutionary atonement and not other, so they may only look at the guilt, but not shame or not the problem of death itself and things like that. What's good with C.S. Lewis is he captures lots of these things. And even the way that the cross is the defeat of the devil. That's something that is often missed entirely from gospel presentations in the present day, but it's there in the Bible. The cross is a confrontation with the devil, and it's a defeating of the devil, the cross. And that's important in the gospel, that aspect of it. Overcoming guilt, overcoming shame, overcoming death, overcoming the devil. And there's other things as well that go on in the cross to do with the law and, other things. But all these aspects. So what's good is C.S. Lewis's myth, fairy tale, captures quite a lot of elements of the cross. So therefore, it's good. Betrayal, sacrifice, resurrection, new creation. It speaks to deep longings. We know what it is to be Edmund, perhaps. Guilty, ashamed, in need of rescue, done something that you wish you hadn't done and that you wish you could wind the clock back. You wish you could get free of something you've eaten, like substance abuse that we're addicted to. There is something that is so delicious we can't stop craving it, and yet it enslaves us. There's all these things. And in a way, we're longing for an Aslan, someone who can break the power of slavery, of death, who will take our place, because we cannot face up to the consequences of what we've done. Not just that we are not prepared to do that, but we just cannot face the consequences. They're too big. They destroy us. And so this one who can take our place and will die for us, so that we will never truly die, bring spring into our winter. It's told as a story. It's not a sermon, but it preaches. It bypasses, in a way, argument, as we've thought, and goes to the heart. So, again, let's have that invitation to read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe again, and read it maybe with the eyes of a child if we've not done that before, and not overanalyze it, but enjoy the experience of it. Feel the betrayal, the sacrifice, the joy of resurrection, and let that speak to our hearts and our minds of the gospel. I love when C.S. Lewis once said, "Someday you will be old enough to start reading fairy tales again." Maybe that day is today.